Hello, everyone. Welcome to Bitcoin Not Crypto. I'm Forrest Hodel. I'm joined today by Michael Sullivan, friend of the channel. Had you on before with a couple things that we talked about around MSTR. I mean, you're an interesting guy. I love your tweets. We talked a lot about that. But something has changed here. You've released a new book, and there's some. I haven't read it, so I'm wanting to get a little bit into it. But my understanding is that there's Bitcoin themes throughout it, but it's not a Bitcoin. It's not solely a Bitcoin book. Is that kind of how you would say it, or can you maybe tell everyone a little bit about it?
You're spot on. So it is very much like a Bitcoin book in its themes. Bitcoin is absolutely central to the plot and becomes more so throughout. But I wanted to have this thing in a packaging that I could hand off to my wife's book club. Like right now, those kind of people are just not going to read like the Bitcoin Standard. They're not going to read like Broken Money or something like that. As much as I adore those books, they're just not the kind of thing that I could give to some of these people. So I basically wanted something to fill that void. I also just genuinely enjoy thriller books and wanted something like that in the Bitcoin space. So that's what I did. I've got it sitting next to me here. It's called Blood of the Bourgeoisie. Um, Again, Bitcoin themes like
Yeah.
orange, all the bees and alliteration, and the cover takes place on Jekyll Island. Actually, it's one of the scenes from the book. Um, but yeah, so pretty pumped about it so far. I had a boatload of beta readers that were in the non-Bitcoin space just because I've been trying to optimize for this thing to be as captivating as possible, even for people that aren't as interested in Bitcoin. And so far, so good.
Yeah, so there's one thing that's interesting here is that Bitcoin is like everybody has heard the term Bitcoin. Everybody has some understanding. Like, it's very rare that you talk to somebody and they've never heard the term Bitcoin, and you ask them, okay, what is Bitcoin? They say, oh, it's some digital currency. Like that might just be as basic. Like that's the most basic understanding of what people have. So, um, to include that in a fiction book that tells a story and isn't like it's not an educate like a strictly educational book is kind of an interesting idea because I think that I wonder, is there other people that have done this with books? Like, because I feel like Bitcoin is a really like obviously Bitcoin's really interesting, but
Mhm.
it's interesting to build stories around it and actually have it uh, as its own kind of character, or as its plot, as a type of plot mechanism to like drive stories forward using Bitcoin itself and the tool and utility of Bitcoin, right?
I got to talk carefully here because I don't want to give away any spoilers, but like the way Bitcoin works is central to kind of how things evolve in the end of the book. Like, so basically it opens up with two billionaires being speared over the bowl of Bowling Green, like the bronze bull on Wall Street, like with 12 seed words on their chest carved in it. The bad guys in the book are killing rich people and distributing their money using the Bitcoin network to poor people across the world. So it's kind of like a technological Robin Hood a little bit in a way. And that literally cannot happen using older technology. Like these things could be stopped and stuff. So it kind of goes into that from that perspective where you actually see how this could work with Bitcoin because it's freedom money, right? And you could not have done this previously when the original like Robin Hood story was written and stuff. So that is definitely a big part of it. And yeah, there's a lot of themes about Bitcoin in the book because it takes place in the United States of America too over the 4th of July weekend, which is very much get into some themes of America and how I feel like Bitcoin is a better instantiation of some of the ideals that America was founded on rather than kind of the current version of the country. But yeah, a lot of stuff there, but very much Bitcoin themed throughout. So I think Bitcoiners will love it, but I think people outside of that too.
It's interesting, and even just starting off right there with the seed phrases as a concept, somebody that's interested, they get pulled into the book. They have to understand, okay, well, what is this? Like, okay, you said something about like they wrote the seed words on these corpses, right? They're using that to distribute it. You start to begin to have to like, if you're completely new to Bitcoin, you're like, how does that work? Like, what is that? That's like that's the password. Like that's how you get access to the Bitcoin. Like it's like immediately like teaching somebody just to drive the plot forward, which is such a cool idea, actually. Such a good way to get people to learn.
I have a little bit of a background as a teacher. I taught people how to code for a while. I've been a Brazilian Jiu Jitsu instructor for a while. My wife is a teacher too. So we talk about learning all the time. And one of the big things I've personally learned from doing that is that it's a lot less important to just spew out information and give them a million different things. And it's a lot more important to just inspire interest. Like just get a little bit of exposure to the idea you're trying to convey, make it interesting to them, as captivating as possible. Like the goal is attention capture. And then
Mhm.
from there, you can slowly build on concepts. So I architected the book with that in mind, where like, yeah, the seed phrases are on the first couple pages, but you don't really go into what that means. And slowly, as the story progresses, you get just a little bit deeper, a little bit deeper, a little bit deeper to a culmination that's like, oh, you get more Bitcoin throughout the entire thing. By the end of it, it's like very central. Like Bitcoin is very central to the whole story. Again, I don't want to spoil something. It's really hard for me to talk about it without doing that. But um, yeah, like it's kind of a sly roundabout way to orange pill people.
Yeah, smart. Well, so those test readers, and it's available now. So it's like people, you've probably gotten some feedback from other people. I'm sure lots of Bitcoiners, but have you gotten feedback from somebody who knew nothing about Bitcoin, and like, were you able to ask them like, what do you think about Bitcoin? What's your understanding of it now? Like, have a conversation, a Bitcoin centered conversation with somebody who had no previous knowledge of it.
I specifically chose my primary editor that I hired as somebody who wasn't in Bitcoin at all because I
Oh,
wanted this like reader, like just like my optimal beta reader to test out this thing. And yeah, it went really well. Like for starters, they were enjoyed the story the whole way through and helped me like clean it up and everything. But like by the end of it, they were like, "Yeah, I need to learn more about this Bitcoin thing. This is really interesting." And she was very much philosophically aligned with it too, but didn't really understand like kind of. There's just so much information there, so much technical stuff, so to see it from like a more emotional perspective and be in a character and experience it through a character's lens is just a unique thing. And there's a lot of people learn in different ways too. Where I super nerdy software and like I've just always been that way. I love watching podcasts about Bitcoin constantly. Like that's kind of how I'm wired. My wife is not wired that way, and it's really nice to have a different kind of packaging for these messages that are more emotionally charged where so a few characters in the book. One of them is escaping from her country, and her story interweaves with the other ones. But you get to actually ride in the head of somebody who's using Bitcoin and keeping Bitcoin in her brain, like
mhm.
be that character and see that character's thoughts as they're escaping from their country using Bitcoin, and that's a I don't know, just a unique thing and a unique framing for people that have not heard how that's even possible before.
Really cool. Yeah, there's like other stories. Again, I haven't read any Bitcoin fiction. I know there are some other things. I saw a tweet you referencing some other things, but you were purposely kind of seeing what's out there and making exactly what you thought those were maybe lacking or missing, or what you could do specifically beyond that. I have, again, I guess this isn't fiction, but even like the documentaries, like if you search up Bitcoin on Netflix, right? Like everyone has Netflix. You search up Bitcoin, there's like Bitcoin and documentaries about scam. Like every one of them is like a sensationalized uh, story about like some aspect of Bitcoin that's like fear driven, scam, crime. Like this is the kind of thing that they believe as filmmakers and producers and the platform that wants to buy those movies. They think those types of stories will draw people in, and then the people that watch those, they get no aspect of, you mentioned your editor being philosophically aligned with Bitcoin,
Mhm.
right? Like you watch one of those movies, you're not gonna, if you didn't know anything about Bitcoin, you're not gonna be philosophically aligned with Bitcoin because all you assume is that criminals can use it, right? Or like
Mhm.
it's to do with scams, right? So, but there's so much more, right? You mentioned sort of the humanitarian type side of it
Mhm.
in this story. Like there's so many more aspects that are incredibly positive about Bitcoin, and those stories are not being told in a way. They're being told, but not in every sort of facet of how we consume content, I would say. Like not everybody's going to listen to even this, right? An hour long podcast
Mhm.
that's, on a Bitcoin channel and stuff, right? Like it's hard to reach everybody else with those stories where they might align with it,
Mhm.
especially with other types of content that's going to be more sensationalized, I would say.
You got to meet your audience where they're at, or meet people where they're at with these things. There's all sorts of other tops of funnels for people getting in Bitcoin. Like Bitcoin stocks have been so popular, it's got people interested, and they'll go down the rabbit hole. But I'm hoping I can get a new cohort of people potentially interested with this. There's lots of other fiction stories out there. There's some good Bitcoin fiction. I've got a little shelf of them over here in the wall. But there's, I just always felt like there was still this void of story that I really wanted to fill. I don't want to criticize any other ones out there because there's some brilliant ones. One that very frequently gets talked about among Bitcoiners is mandibles. I've heard that
Mm,
a lot as like a potential future under hyperinflation and stuff. I have the book. started reading it, got crazy bored. And I was like, it's a really cool message in there, I can tell, but it's just not going to be captivating. It's not that thing that you could hand off to somebody who's not interested in this already. You have to go into books like that pre-interested, or have a predisposition to wanting to read about this thing to make it through that. And that just is not going to work on a lot of people. And like, it's impossible. You can't like force people these concepts, right? You got to just kind of present it to them. And I think one of the things that fiction can do poorly sometimes is the authors get too preachy about it. Like,
Mm.
I really try to walk that line finely, because you want to explore the ideas, let the characters do what they want to do, and just have a great story. It's more about a great story than Bitcoin specifically. But yeah, hopefully it's navigated in a way where they're going to get exposure. And so far, all of the feedback I've had so far has been, yeah, that I've had a bunch of people finish it recently too, and it's been, yeah, massively positive. So that's been pretty cool.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I think the exposure to Bitcoin, I think it's very rare that somebody gets exposed to Bitcoin even in a positive light where they align with it and they immediately sign up on an exchange and pour it over, 80-90% of their portfolio into Bitcoin. That comes later, and that comes in like all these layers, and it's like these little things where you're like, you start to understand money and how gold has historically been money, and then what fiat money is, and the debasement trade that's now becoming a popular term, and how everything goes down, even other assets priced in Bitcoin, right? And then you start to realize, well, this is the best asymmetrical bet there is, right? And it becomes sort of this financial idea, investment idea, savings idea, but like it starts off at it starts off as such a small idea depending on how you get exposed to it, but only from that small idea are you then able to be open to the bigger, like the other doors, right? Like you have to go through one door to have access to the other doors of potential that you could walk through, which is the big rabbit hole of Bitcoin. So it's cool that you're showcasing Bitcoin in this way to a different audience. Like, think of, hey, I just think about, like, okay, you've written a thriller, there's murder in it, there's the Robin Hood stuff, like it's like there's so many people that are interested in that have no connection to Bitcoin,
Mhm.
which is just, that's a brand new um audience that could potentially get interested in all the other aspects of Bitcoin.
I love how you phrase it with the opening doors and having new things available to you, because that's how it felt for me too. It's really not like I immediately shifted my entire life overnight to be obsessed with Bitcoin. Like, I went pretty quick down the rabbit hole, but it started with a seed of interest. And I think that's the best thing to provide to people, is just something to have a little bit more interest. So I, it's been one of the things I wish I had a better tool to give to somebody too, like a better book, a better kind of thing. And I really do feel like that's what this can be for some people. Um, Granted, it's also the story I wanted. It's like a little bit selfish too, because I just thought like this is the ideal story for me. I tried to write that to the best of my ability, um, but it can be both things, right?
And I think as creators, that's probably the right thing oftentimes to do as creators is, I mean, you got to keep the audience in mind for sure, but like you need to follow your own interest, otherwise you're not going to make like a high quality creation. I would say
Mm-hmm.
that's super typical. At least I found that with my own creative endeavors, right? It's like it's always following my own interest. I'll make a video where I do a deep dive on something, and it's because I want to figure out what that is. I want to know. I want to fill a knowledge gap for myself, more so than I think that. And then there's a layer to that where I also think, my audience would benefit from knowing that as well, right? So it's a combination of the two that um, make something compelling, I would say.
It comes off right. Like, you can tell when somebody's really interested in a topic and just passionate about it. You
Yeah.
can't fake that kind of thing. Yeah, and people that are fascinated with an idea are just infectious to listen to whenever they're talking about it.
Yeah, you can't fake it either. You can't fake that passion, man. People can feel authenticity, and I think you can feel inauthenticity as well, and you can see that in a lot of content that's made today. Like, there's no heart and soul in like the AI slop, and it's like
Mhm.
that's why you scroll past it when you see it if it's video, right? And
I,
it's yeah. Go ahead.
I got so much of this when I was writing the book too, about like, how are you going to use AI in this book? Like, it's AI is going to obsolete this. I'm like, no, dude, it's not, because people have this spider sense for AI slop these days. Like, there is not a single word in that book that was written by an AI, but at the same time, I used AI tools massively throughout this to improve it, just because it's like you can have it help as with the editing process, or I have characters that are ex-military. So for example, I fed every single chapter to this thing, be like, if you were an ex-military, what would you think about in this scene? What kind of thoughts would be inside your head, to make sure that I was doing my due diligence and character research. One of the characters is from Sudan and is the one escaping our country. And I just used these tools religiously for a period there to make sure I did every possible bit of due diligence and research. So that I've had a lot of people in the writer space. There's a Bitcoin writers group, kind of having little debates about how AI and stuff was going to be used in fiction writing generally.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, AI is great for like the use cases that you just mentioned, which is essentially like creating a research assistant with a specific type of point of view,
Mhm.
and then using that as a reference so that you can create in a more um, realistic way, or be more accurate, I would say. But yeah, off like that's the kind of stuff that you can offload to an AI. But offloading sort of the more creative aspects is like you can tell exactly as you said. Like you can people can tell when something's been created with AI, and I think. I mean, maybe this will. I mean, who knows what the future is going
Mhm.
to hold? Maybe AI is going to get so good we cannot tell. I don't know, but until then, I think there's going to be like more demand for more authentic stuff because there's more inauthentic stuff, right? There's more AI as there's more garbage. People want the more pure signal, right? It almost creates the demand for it because people are seeking that out after being exposed to so much noise with AI out there.
I couldn't agree more. And like, I'm a pragmatist. If I could use AI to just write the best possible prose or character dialogue and stuff, I would have done it. But I literally could not do it. It would not work to do so. Like, it just doesn't have the soul that you can do if you manually go through it yourself and just like give everything you have to each word on the page and make sure it's the best version it can be. It can help give you some cues and clues as to how to improve stuff, but it can't do the whole thing. And like, yeah, I'm open to the idea that it could one day. Like, I don't
Mhm.
want to be too close-minded to how this technology could evolve. It very much could do all of those things and more. But I want to make the best story that possibly can today, right now, and I'm going to use all the tools I can. But AI just cannot do that today, in that capacity, at least.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and another way that I find it useful, and this might be like bordering on like the creation of stuff, like the creativity aspect of it. But like once you already have the seed of an idea, being just asking AI like, what else could I do? What else is possible here? And then using those as potential jumping off points for your own creation as well. That's been handy because your mind like your mind it's almost like you only have a certain amount of like RAM, right? Like of like short term like capacity for holding information in your own mind. So if you can it's AI, it's crazy. Like it's like AI is like can be used as like an extension of your capacity to compute things.
Mhm.
So you could offload some of this and just store that data in the AI for a little bit and then come back to it. And once you've offload that, you have more space to compute and go beyond the AI does. Anyway, I've been using AI like crazy, and it's been awesome. It's been
Yeah,
great, but it does have its limitations, especially with like the human aspects of things. I would say like there's a lot of things AI can do and replace, and I think the the things that it has the hardest time and will take the longest to replace are these like fundamentally like human aspects,
mhm.
like uh being able to be like authentic, compassionate. um yeah, just there's certain human elements that it's definitely is struggles at, I would say, at this point.
Yeah. So Bitcoin podcasters are totally safe.
Yeah, well, we'll see. I don't know. Digital Sailor is pretty good, actually. I've seen
Yeah,
some stuff like that.
this is true for sure.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, the other thing too is like trust. Trust is a big one that AI can't replace, I would say. Like, you build trust with people, and I think that's just harder to replace with AI. But anyway, it's maybe besides the point. So, um, kind of back to this idea of creating Bitcoin centered content for a different audience. This is something that I've been rallying for in the Bitcoin community. I've mentioned this a lot actually, where I think that we need to go further out of, like, it's all good to just be like, oh, you can retire, like like, I'm in the video space here, so like make videos about, oh, you can retire on 0.001 Bitcoin, and Bitcoin's going to 100. This is the reason why Bitcoin's going to 200,000. And like, these are the videos that get clicks and stuff. But the only people watching those, I think, are other Bitcoiners. Like,
Mhm.
they're Bitcoiners already. They're putting their savings in Bitcoin. And I know from my own experience, I found Bitcoin from, or I got interested more in Bitcoin from Bitcoin being infiltrating these other spaces that I was interested in. Like, a comedian that I'm listening to as on a podcast talking about Bitcoin. It just entering in your brain. Like, it just has to go into your brain a couple times from what you're already interested in before then you're able to go over into the Bitcoin basically echo chamber that exists. But I think we need to reach out beyond our echo chamber. So I really commend you for doing that with this book.
One of the framings I've heard is that everybody takes a certain amount of touch points to get Bitcoin. I got exposed to it in 2015, again in 2017, heard about it a little bit in 2019. Then finally, like 2020, 2022 was like, all right, I'm going to admit that I was wrong to ignore this thing and then actually do a little bit of research. But so it always feels like 2021 is like when I did the thing and got into it, right?
Hmm.
But in reality, those touch points were really important too. The fact that I just heard the word Bitcoin in 2017, saw some of my coworkers gambling with shitcoins at the time, like I had just that little nugget in my brain of like what this thing is. I think that's really important. Like the more this pervades culture and gets
Hmm.
out there into the world, the more people have those touch points. Like you really can't fault people for hearing about Bitcoin for the first time from you and then not getting it right away. I didn't get it right away. You can't think that they're going to randomly not get it or randomly get it on their first exposure to this thing. That's not fair. So just having more exposures, and when you do talk to somebody about it, being like, maybe I'm their second exposure, they're going to get a third exposure in a year from now from somebody else. So even though I was not successful in totally persuading them, like I'm helping move this message along. I heard that framing. And I just thought it was such an optimistic way to think about it, and not think of, okay, well, they didn't listen to me today. It was a failure. Just keep putting yourself out there, keep putting the message out there, and we keep chipping away at this idea every single day.
Yeah, I like that a lot too, because it does feel pretty discouraging when you talk to somebody about Bitcoin and they're just like not interested. I rarely talk to somebody and I actually get like serious pushback. Like, sometimes I have online, like in the not the wrong space, but in a space that is like, uh, people just, like, I've posted like on Facebook, like you meet a bit of resistance against Bitcoin on Facebook, I would say.
Yep.
But again, maybe that was just that one touch point, and then that person again will have that idea in their head. That person mentioned this aspect of it. Oh, maybe they were right about it. Maybe that was true. When they see maybe they need like a more authoritative sort of mainstream media type outlet to talk about something, some benefit of it, right? Um, yeah, Bitcoin is developing. Bitcoin's getting more accepted, and it is just like those little touch points. And I think also that recognizing, like, you don't need to be the end touch point that makes that person fully understand Bitcoin, makes it so that you won't get as disappointed when you bring up Bitcoin and get no positive feedback from whoever you're talking about it from. Yeah, because yeah, ultimately you're not responsible for orange pilling these people, but it can feel a little bit discouraging sometimes, for sure.
Yeah, and I think that framing does that in a really good way.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. So so then what's next for you must be just, talking the book up. Are you getting like a good response, do you think? How does it feel?
Oh, hugely so. It was such a leap of faith too. This has been very lonely process for me, right? Like writing a book, I've spent like well over, or a little over 3,000 hours, like over the last few years writing this thing.
Wow.
And like just an obscene amount of time by myself. And Bitcoin can be kind of alienating too, right? Where you kind of have this thing and there's not a lot of people in your personal life that are into it. Like that coupled with writing a novel about Bitcoin was just this really, yeah, like alienating thing for me. And it's been really an amazing thing to hear other Bitcoiners like sending me pictures of the chapter, me like, that's so interesting or cool. That's interesting framing of that thing. Yeah, so I like just released this thing, so people are very early into it. I've only had a couple that have finished it so far, but a bunch are like 100 pages in, that kind of thing, and it's been overwhelmingly positive. So one of the one of my strengths as a writer is kind of plot weaving and architecture. One of the things I wasn't so sure about when I released this was like how captivating it would be from chapter one. And so far, so good. Like I've had people just cruise through it and be like, dude, I read through the first 9 chapters accidentally last night. Yeah, I stayed up way past my bedtime. Like that was what I wanted. So that's all been overwhelmingly positive so far. And the people that have finished it have, yeah, had fantastic things to say too.
So you're concerned sort of about the hook of it?
Yeah, basically.
Oh.
Well, like I said, I wanted this to be so captivating right away that you could hand it to somebody that's not down the Bitcoin rabbit hole, that it there has very little patience,
Mhm.
and it's still going to read the thing. And yeah, so far so good on that at least. Everybody's different. Everybody's reading preferences are different. So like there's a lot of other Bitcoin fiction out there, and there's everybody's has their personal preferences around these things. So maybe it would do better with a different type of person. But I just wanted to apply or be as applicable to as many people as possible and get them into it. So
Mhm.
so far successful.
Cool. So there's been like a lot of recently businesses, I mean all these Bitcoin treasury companies like even Steak and Shake, right? Like Steak and Shake, like I'm sure they got more sales because of their Bitcoin, and like if they hold that Bitcoin, it's really valuable. But I think a large part of the value for them for accepting Bitcoin has been that Bitcoiners have showed up, right?
Mhm.
It's been a really good just on the marketing alone, it's been a really good strategy, I imagine.
Mhm.
Um, Plus, it's awesome that they do that, and I understand why Bitcoiners are supportive of that. Do you think that like having this Bitcoin narrative in your book has actually been a way for you to get more attention for your book? Like, because I'm trying to I'm trying to ask that question because like I think other people are, I think Bitcoiners might be a little bit um, afraid to like put Bitcoin into their life too much.
Mhm.
But I think that there's actually like a huge advantage to doing this.
Mhm.
That is on like that could just be just straight up marketing for a project or something like that.
So a couple things here. For starters, absolutely. The support I've gotten from Bitcoiners and friends has been overwhelming so far. Like just yeah, the internet random friends I have on this like Bitcoin community just been absolutely supportive. But there's a negative flip side to this too, where I really don't want to speak too negatively to this thing because again, people's personal preferences can be very different. But there was a book, a thriller written about a year ago about Bitcoin by a pretty large thriller writer. Went on a bunch of podcasts, talked about it and stuff, and I was like very pumped about this. I'm like, I get my Bitcoin book and stuff. And I read it and I was like, yeah, this seems like they jammed Bitcoin in here to just like explore the concepts. The dude talked about crypto a lot. There was the whole like, who's Satoshi? And we're going to find out who Satoshi actually was. And I absolutely hate that plot line. Yeah, so it felt to me like jamming a thriller novel into Bitcoin to get drive sales. That's what this was. I don't want to say much more than that because I don't want to call them out. And like, yeah, you don't know like for sure if that's what actually happened, but
Mhm.
I did not want to be that. I love Bitcoin. I'm here as a Bitcoiner, and I want to spread the message. I'm positive that'll be apparent in the book. It's not like just some marketing thing on top of it, but yeah, it's there's definitely some stuff like that out there for sure.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I come from the world of documentary filmmaking, and HBO made a film last year about Bitcoin, and I thought the least compelling part of that documentary was the search for Satoshi, which is what it was all kind of ended up being geared around. But the production value, the editing, the narrative, the host. It was all very compelling. It actually told um it actually explained Bitcoin in ways that I thought was very comprehensive for people. And I used that film to show to no coiners, like in my family, right? With the caveat that I think the ending premise is ridiculous and he's clearly not found Satoshi and he probably shouldn't have cared anyway.
Yeah.
And all this, right? Like all my opinion and stuff, but I definitely thought that was like by far the least compelling side of it. And it did feel shoehorned in as well too. And I do believe that was actually supposed to be a 3-part series, which if it was developed more, maybe could have been compelling, could have been interesting. But it did feel like this is like the driving narrative. This is a way to get views again, right? Get eyeballs on this. We found out who Satoshi is, right? Like that's a big marketing ploy. Yeah. So yeah, that's interesting that you would say that. Um, and I think again, this kind of comes back to like the authenticity. If you're just doing this for marketing, then probably skip it. But if it is actually authentic to you, you'll help your audience, help find an audience because of how crazy Bitcoiners are. Like they're
Yeah,
just Bitcoiners are just crazy about anything Bitcoin.
I could not write about it. Like you come to this network, and I was filled with so much hope and optimism because of it. I was like, I need to provide more and like do something else to help build this thing. I'm not like being a cypherpunk and writing code, but I am writing a story hopefully that can at least inspire a couple people to learn more about this thing and maybe join our network. So like I hope that it comes off in the book, and I certainly tried to.
Yeah, for sure. So what would you say is your ultimate goal for this book? Like, have you thought that far ahead? Like, and did you self publish? You self publish this or?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
yeah, what do you want to have seen happen with this book?
I'm going to be pretty pumped if I can even have this be successful in orange pilling one person out there. Like it's already been pretty successful in my own like expectation of it because of the positive feedback I've got from Bitcoiners. But I'm just taking it one day at a time. I am very much somebody that enjoys working on things and making something that I really care about and is beautiful. I probably could have done a lot more marketing, paid a lot more for that, had the forward written by somebody famous or not, but I just like put literally every bit of effort in that I had into making the story as good as I possibly could. And we'll see if Bitcoiners respect the proof of work or not, and it spreads. That's kind of where I'm at right now.
Yeah, yeah, I resonate with that. That's my favorite part is the creation. My least favorite part is trying to get people to see my creation by far. I mean, you're great at it on Twitter. You're so good at getting attention to what you're talking about. Again, just in an authentic way, not like clickbait stuff or anything, but
Mhm.
just having fun and showing that. So I think people will resonate. Yeah, I hope people do. It'd be great to see you like I don't know. Do you want to do readings and stuff, or like go to conferences and sell it at booths, or like have you thought about any of that stuff?
Oh, I'm for sure going to do it. But part of the weird thing here is like I've been so antisocial in doing this thing where I told myself I couldn't go to Bitcoin conferences until I wrapped this up. So I've been like this super antisocial Bitcoiner that's mostly just like hanging out with my internet friends, and I finally get to flip the switch to be like a more social version, and I'm pretty stoked about that. Honestly, I already got a few things lined up to see some people in person.
That's hilarious. Yeah.
I suppose one random thought is just that top of funnel. Like
Mm.
this is just one of them. I think there's so many of these out there. Like in a broader sense, like these Bitcoin stocks are very much a top of funnel thing for people. Where I've directly now had a couple people that have bought MSTR or even like an AI company that holds Bitcoin, like an Iran or something like that, and been more interested in Bitcoin because of it. So like I suppose what I'm trying to say is that I'm optimistic on top of funnels. Like I just want more top of funnels. It doesn't have to be this like perfect Bitcoin maxi from day one thing. I just want more people here. And every person that I've seen that's got exposure has eventually learned some of these more um, like profound Bitcoin concepts, given enough time in the space.
Yeah, and move towards self custody and things too. I imagine too. Like I think about, paper Bitcoin summer and how interested people are in Meta Planet and strategy and all every one of them, right?
Mhm.
um but the people that like it's I think it's actually pretty rare that people sell cold storage sats to buy one of these. Like maybe they're selling like the sats they have on Coinbase or something. Like they haven't even maybe taken full control of their coins, but probably a lot of these people that are interested in are just seeing the gains and saying, "Hey, I got a bunch of money in this brokerage, or I got some other stocks I can swap," and they're buying the MSTR, right, or something like that, and then that again, yeah, like you said, that's the funnel leading them down to Bitcoin, um, and I think that's more so the case. Like more often than not, it's people with no Bitcoin exposure now getting Bitcoin exposure through these products, leading them further down the Bitcoin rabbit hole rather than the reverse happening, which I think a lot of like anti paper Bitcoin summer people kind of think is happening. Like I think people are thinking this is taking attention away from self custody Bitcoin, like keep your 12 words in your head, cypherpunk, all this kind of stuff. I actually don't think so. I think the people that are just drawn to that, like the gains only, the paper gain, like that kind of stuff, they're just there anyway.
Mhm.
I don't think it's drawing people out from the hardcore Bitcoiners out of their cold storage. I really think that's a lot less so.
Yeah, I strongly agree. Yeah, if top of funnel is like MSTR or like something else, bottom of funnel is cold storage Bitcoin, right? Like that really does seem like a one-way path for a lot of people. Yeah, like I talk about these things a lot on Twitter because I think they're really intellectually interesting. I know you do tons of videos about them for, I'm assuming, some more reasons, right? They're fun to think about. It's a novel concept. We're watching this new industry spin up in real time. It's kind of hard not to think that's a pretty cool thing. But like Bitcoin's the real revolution. And literally everybody that I know that's been here for longer than like the last year is way more into the actual real Bitcoin thing. And we talk about this other thing on the side. But I think the way like algorithms on X incentivize things and in YouTube too, where they just like pump stuff up. I think a lot of Bitcoin stocks have been really front facing towards these newer people. And I don't think they're quite as far down the funnel yet. One of me being ever the optimist, like I think one of the maybe positive side effects of this MNAV compression recently is it kind of radicalized a few people that were only into these Bitcoin stocks
Mm.
and are now kind of like, all right, maybe I need this real thing that's not going to like just get demolished on me because of sentiment reasons.
Well, it's kind of the same thing that has happened in the past. I'm sure it still happens, but I pay no attention to it with like crypto, right?
Mhm.
Before this, like people probably started off hearing about Bitcoin, Ethereum, whatever. They buy that, then they start dabbling in all this other crap, and then it goes to almost nothing, and they're like, "Oh," and then they see Bitcoin ripping, and like these things decouple, right? And that's basically what's happened recently with a lot of the MNAV compression. Is even with acquiring more Bitcoin per share and on their balance sheet, there's still this floor that it's going to get to, or could get to, if MNAV compressed to one, and they're pushing that floor up as fast as they can, but the MNAV is compressing downwards. And depending on where you bought in these treasury companies, in their price action, you could you could be way down on it, even though they're acquiring more Bitcoin and raising that floor up. And then that whole time, Bitcoin is going up. So there's these decoupling events that happen, which have definitely shaken people out of their Bitcoin treasury company position. Whether that's the right decision or not, I don't know. It doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter to speculate on for me, but um, it ultimately again leads them to Bitcoin, which is crazy. Like it's that saying, like all roads lead to Bitcoin.
Mhm.
It really is.
You can see the sentiment shift, and I think
Yeah.
part of the reason the sentiment is so low is because of the treasury company thing. Yeah, I did a post recently that got a little traction just because it was kind of funny that I published this book within like 8 minutes of the low of the last like couple months here. It was like the lowest I could have, like lowest price wise I could have possibly published it. And somebody was like saying to me, like, it's not that low price wise. True, it's for sure not. Like this is not a serious correction comparatively. But for people in the Bitcoin treasury spaces, like it was brutal. Like so there, people were rage quitting left and right, and sentiment is surprisingly low.
Yeah. It's really low. And I kind of talked about this today on Maple Bitcoin, but I kind of see like, these corrections that we saw in Bitcoin's history of like, 70, 80%. We haven't really seen anything quite like that in Bitcoin, but we've seen that in Bitcoin treasury companies. And it's almost like these are these buffer zones, or like this padding where it can happen there, and it doesn't force these companies to sell any Bitcoin. It's just share price. It might inhibit their ability to acquire more Bitcoin, like if they're running like a sort of an equity issuance arbitrage where they're issuing shares. If their MNAV compresses so much, they lack the ability to do that as effectively as they once were, but they're still not spitting their Bitcoin back onto the market. And so it's this dampening effect where like the crashes like can happen in these stocks, and it doesn't have as it might have a slight effect because it's less demand, but it's not having an immediate direct impact on Bitcoin itself. So it's like, yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting dynamic that I think is playing out there.
And on either side of that, when people are selling or buying these treasury companies, or treasury companies are buying Bitcoin, they're doing so using like algorithmic strategies to not move the price too. So it's like dampening vol because you don't have the average person YOLOing into Bitcoin. It's dampening vol because companies are doing it as tactically as possible to not move the price. I think this is a huge reason we've seen the implied volatility on Bitcoin fall so dramatically. I'm very curious to see if that changes coming up here. Not to mention all the vol harvesting strategies that have become
Hmm.
very much more popular over the last 8 months, a year, somewhere in there, pretty much. I can't remember when Misty launched, probably a bit over a year, but yeah, like all those elements.
Yeah, Misty. Yeah, so volatility dampening. So covered call strategies that are basically sort of harvesting out the volatility to pay back in dividends. Very very popular products. Even I believe like the put strategy that Metaplan is doing to with um, a portion of their cash to either acquire Bitcoin or to raise more cash. That's like a sort of a volatility dampening type process within their own stock as well. So yeah, there's a lot of, well, volatility is actually like pretty useful. So like they're using it to try to extract value out, right? But yeah, lowering volatility over time. That algorithmic buying, that was something you mentioned last time we talked, and to me that was something that like it's so obvious. I don't know why I didn't think about that, but like it's so clear to me that like as we see dips happen, that buyers are just coming in, and it's like these buyers. Who are these buyers, right? Like retail interest is still not here. Retail doesn't really act like this in general, and it's clearly all these institutional buyers that are just like, it's even like the OTC desks need to source it too, right? Like there's only so many individuals, and there's sourcing pools, right? Like they occasionally have to buy on the open market too, and if they can algorithmically buy to build up a balance to then transfer to somebody, right? Like that makes sense as well. So I think you're spot on with that, being part of, again, why we're seeing these sort of dampened downward movements.
I think it's multivariate too, right? Where that's probably a big thing. But in addition to that, there's also like portfolio weighting that's happening a lot more with these things now too, where people don't stack sats necessarily. They're like, just have this percentage of my portfolio is going to be in this thing. So depending on the price of Bitcoin, they'll shave some off or add position size when price dips. Like all those elements of traditional Wall Street things, traditional portfolio strategies are now embedded into Bitcoin or becoming part of Bitcoin. There's just a lot of these things that have fundamentally changed when the ETFs launched, and now that the treasury companies are being on top of it, it's like feels like such a new era in Bitcoin. But it's going to be interesting too with how much vol dampening or vol suppression has like been out there too, because this also can cause short squeezes occasionally when too much of this is out there, and we haven't really experienced that yet. Granted, prices moved extremely rapidly right before we're talking here, um, but I'm curious to see if this continues or not, because I know a lot of people have been pretty offsides, selling covered calls very aggressively on these treasury companies and Bitcoin more broadly.
You're looking at one of them right now. I just had to roll my
Yeah.
Friday call up and out a little bit, but I'm not too worried about that. But yeah, you could be majorly offside on some on one of these, and with a price movement like, um, again, there's sort of this decoupling that continues to happen with MSTR, and as long as that happens, there's maybe a little bit more room to go until there's some serious offside, people being caught offside pretty seriously. But we'll see. Um, and then yeah, and then oh man, that would be fun, right? Like these people having to cover and come up with shares, and oh man, it just becomes a mess. And could be really fun for some of these Bitcoin adjacent things, or Bitcoin itself, right? Like a lot of it is derived from all of the shorts that are on it and all of the leveraged longs, and like the you can see this kind of happen like once we reach these levels where there's these all the perps, right? Either short or long depending on the direction it's going. When it reaches there, it just kind of gaps up, like it just shoots up really rapidly because these people are being forced closed and having to cover and having to buy back, and there's just nothing they can do about it, basically. Or maybe there is to some degree, but it will result in the price movement pretty rapidly past these moments of where there's a lot of leverage within the system.
It's crazy how much Bitcoin has been a forcing function to learn about this stuff. I
Yeah.
don't know about you, but I have learned so much about those things and become so much more familiar with all these mechanics because of Bitcoin. Like I'm sitting here trying to understand why this thing does what it does, and understanding all those things is critical in doing so.
Yeah, it is. It's definitely yeah, forcing function for sure. I think the other thing, like I wanted to get your opinion on this was we're talking about Wall Street so much here, kind of coming into the space. I think a lot of people with a sort of a basic understanding of Bitcoin see BlackRock as the enemy, just generally, right? Like they've watched some videos about how they control the world and all this stuff, right? Um, do you think, what's your opinion on that, kind of like the idea that like Wall Street is coming in, they're going to capture Bitcoin, they're going to ruin Bitcoin? Um, what's your thoughts around that? Like, does it go against the ethos of Bitcoin being born out of 2008 financial crisis, Occupy, all this kind of stuff? Is it being co-opted kind of by Wall Street?
This is kind of hilarious because like a huge theme of the book is like against Wall Street. Like they're literally the bad guys are killing billionaires, and there's some people's perspective in there that just like hate Wall Street. But I think there's a lot more nuance to this, and I think that like inherently a shareholder of a thing is like when we say institutions, it's not just like Larry Fink out there deciding what to do with all of IBIT and
Yeah,
everything
yeah,
on a cold card that he controls. Like that is not how these things work. They are being forced to sell or buy based on a boatload of individuals that are using these things in their various accounts. Like I think the average Bitcoiner that's not particularly well educated yet in the way that like some of these markets work don't really understand that their companies are made up of tons of shareholders, and each of those shareholders does have a small amount of control over the company. So some of this is for sure antithetical to the ideas of Bitcoin. But as I mentioned earlier, I'm quite the pragmatist. I think it's important to live in the world that you find yourself in, not just the ideological world you want it to exist in, which is
Mhm.
very common in Bitcoin. People like want to like I see that in myself too. I do think Bitcoin will change the world, but we live in this world right now. I think it's important to embrace it and have tools that exist in this world now that'll help bring about a more Bitcoinized future and leverage the strengths of Bitcoin and let more people get on board with it. Because again, top of funnel, like holding IBIT is probably better than holding like S&P or SPY or whatever else people are doing. And it might just be that little nudge or touch point that people need to be like, all right, well, I don't own real Bitcoin. Maybe I should do that because I've seen this price appreciation from this thing. I think that's a net positive. Like, yeah, maybe it doesn't have this perfect alignment with the freedom money aspects of Bitcoin that I know you and I are like really passionate about, but it's net better for somebody who's like 70 and has a retirement account that doesn't really want to do cold storage today. Like, are you really going to tell me that's a worse thing for the world if they buy a few more shares of IBIT? I think that's a net positive, even if it's small and not as optimal as cold storage Bitcoin. But yeah, that's kind of my general thoughts there.
I agree. Yeah, there's the world we want to live in, and there's the world we do live in, and um, I mean, yeah, there's a lot of things there, but like People might even just see the expense ratio of these ETFs, and if as this raises in value of their portfolio, they might think, "Oh, what is this thing? I got to look more into this," and then realize, "Oh, I can just own this. I don't have to pay somebody else to custody it." And actually, they're just custodying it in a way that I personally could also do. I could set up a very robust security system that is highly likely of what they have to some degree of, they probably have it distributed in different multi-sigs and stuff, but
Mhm.
I could set up a multi-sig like that have insane security levels. Um, that could be appealing to people, right? Just cutting out that expense ratio, just the idea of Bitcoin being a bearer asset that they could actually hold. And again, yeah, just it depends on the person, and it's this, yeah, the funnel that leads them to it. I'll get comments on my videos sometimes that's like, yeah, but what what happens when BlackRock decides to dump all their Bitcoin, and so does MSTR, and it's like they it's not, well, with with BlackRock, it's not their Bitcoin. Like they it's a it, they have basically a product where other people are buying Bitcoin and they're holding it through them. It's other people's Bitcoin that they're holding custody of.
Mm.
So it would have to be all those individuals and institutions and everybody that holds IBIT that sells it for BlackRock to dump the Bitcoin, right? So, and it's similar with MSTR. Like there's shareholders, and Sailor has a outsized voting ability, but it's below 50%. But yeah, it's kind of the same thing. It's not Sailor who owns all the 639,000 Bitcoin. It's MSTR, the vehicle, the instrument of MSTR, the company that holds it. And there's all sorts of laws and regulations, and fiduciary duty and duty to the shareholders, all this kind of stuff that really makes it not the case. And I think to me it was like understanding, actually the ETFs were a big catalyst for me to kind of like go more in. Like I had Bitcoin beforehand, but I was like, oh, this is clearly an obvious reason to buy more of it. And it was just the idea of this is becoming an asset that is more accessible. It's just easier for people to buy Bitcoin. Yes, it's not cold storage, but they can buy Bitcoin now through this, through their brokerage, hold it in all of their registered accounts, whatever. And to me, it was like the inaccessibility of Bitcoin, or the new ability to access Bitcoin in other ways increases the demand for and that was it's seriously as simple of as a thesis that I had, and it being BlackRock and IBIT, or like, yeah, being BlackRock, one of the biggest money or ETF issuers out there. I was just like, oh, this is going to be huge. So that was a big reason for me to buy Bitcoin or
Just a
more so.
no-brainer.
Yeah.
I think an interesting other little mental exercise that you could do is so one thing I frequently hear from people that push back towards IBIT or these other ETFs, or it's not cold storage Bitcoin. What if there is a giant government seizure or something bad that happens, and people are rushing to get out into their cold storage Bitcoin because they actually need it for some reason or another? Their banks are shutting stuff down or stuff like that, or they're restricting how much you can cash out of a 401k. Okay, like if you're imagine yourself in that scenario, if a person holds no IBIT or no Bitcoin treasury company or nothing versus a person that does hold some in those, like which person is more likely to go to Bitcoin? The person that
Mhm.
probably has been holding IBIT for years or something like that, even if they weren't like a Bitcoiner yet, but just like had 5% Bitcoin, they would have had more time spent looking at the network, researching that network. They'd be more likely to go learn about, okay, I'm going to quickly go get this real Bitcoin thing. Or the person that doesn't have any might not even think to do that right away. And again, it's a marginal difference. It's a
Mhm.
small change, but I do think these like smaller positive framings are a good way to think about adoption because it's not everybody's going to use this network like you or I do, and that's totally cool. We want this thing to be as accessible to people, no matter their background, as possible.
Yeah, totally. And there's different use cases to it. And yeah, there's different people need different ways to get exposure to it. I totally understand that for the individual. I do have sort of a thesis and idea of like the idea here that I have is that cold storage Bitcoin is actually more valuable than IBIT,
Mhm.
and could trade at a premium in a situation where like a situation kind of like you described, right? Like if you need Bitcoin to actually use as payment, you can't send somebody your IBIT. Right? It's actually Bitcoin and cold storage is actually more useful in that way. Therefore, there could actually be a premium on Bitcoin and or a lack of premium, or a discount to something like IBIT. Like it would be a kind of a weird tail scenario for that to happen, but like it's a potential possibility, I would think, actually.
I think your thesis actually already has proven to be true. So if you go into some of the I don't know exactly what they're called, but like decentralized markets for Bitcoin, if you want to buy peer to peer or KYC or no KYC from people,
Hmm.
you pay a premium typically. You're not paying the same thing you pay in Coinbase. And that is maybe not as wild of a version of what you're describing, but it proves that concept already exists. Where if you want to buy real Bitcoin from somebody that's not Coinbase or a bank or whatever, like you might end up paying a slight premium for that no KYC Bitcoin. Which, yeah, like when you think, okay, I have this many sats and I see the price, so this is what it's worth. Well, yeah, that's what it's worth if you go and sell it to Coinbase. But like maybe if you sell it peer to peer to somebody, you can get a better price for that. And that I don't know. I don't think that becomes less likely over time. And I think it's clear we're trending towards a lot more financial repression. Maybe not everywhere in the world equally, but in
Hmm.
some places there's a lot of it, and that ain't going anywhere. So yeah, I think you're absolutely right.
Yeah, yeah, and that's a good point actually. Yeah, like RoboSats, HODL HODL, BISC. There's massive premiums in those
Yep.
marketplaces, those peer to peer marketplaces. Which is weird because Bitcoin is fungible, right? Like it's basically saying this UTXO is worth more than this, right? And there's sort of like it makes it less fungible, sort of more non-fungible, or there's more valuable sats, right? Which is not the way Bitcoin is designed. That's sort of like an arbitrary idea and story that we've attached to it, or like a third-party mechanism of KYC. It's basically a product of
Yeah.
KYC that's caused that, which uh, does not help the individual. KYC is people that might think that like it's a safety thing or something. It's not making you safer. It's making you less safe. Actually, putting your data on these brokerages, unfortunately, but it's the reality of today. Yeah, I hope to see more peer to peer. Like it's designed to be used peer to peer. It can be used peer to peer, and that will disconnect you from your coins to some degree potentially. And
Mhm.
um, yeah, I think it's crazy that we have KYC and non KYC Bitcoin, but again, that's the reality of today. Um, yeah, Michael, where can people find your book? We're wrapping on an hour here. Where can people find your book, support your work, find you? Anything else you want to add? Now's the time.
Well, for starters, just thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate all the stuff you're putting out there and what you're doing for the Bitcoin network. The best way to find me is probably just on X or Twitter or whatever you call it these days. I'm Sully Michaelvin, Sully. Well, I don't want to spell out all of Michaelvin, but it's like my name. And then my website is michaelrsullivan.com if you want to see more there. Books available on Amazon. That's the best way to get it right now. I'm working on an audiobook right now, and then also I will be selling hardcovers for Sats as soon as Amazon stops being slow and gets them all shipped to me. But yeah, Amazon's the best way to support me right now for sure.
Nice. And so anybody that reads your book, I'm assuming it probably helps a lot to give it a review on Amazon too. I imagine that's helpful.
Hugely so,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Cool. Awesome. All right. Thanks so much for being on the pod. It was fun. I can't wait to read this book. I think me and my wife, we need a book to read together. So we'll probably do that. Stoked for that. And yeah, best of luck with the rest of the promos that you got to do to get more people reading.
I appreciate it. Thanks, man.